Well, the latest polling by 538 shows that Biden is narrowly losing to Trump just 1 month out from the first presidential debate. As well, a Reuters Ipsos poll finds the Israel-Hamas war was dividing Biden's base, with 44% of voters saying they disapprove of how he's handling that conflict. Now, a New York Times Siena poll found that Trump would beat Biden in 5 out of the 6 swing states, citing the main issues for voters in this order: the economy, immigration, abortion, and inflation. Commenting on the latest polls, the Washington Post notes that Biden is polling way behind Democratic candidates running for Senate. Nevada Senate candidate Jackie Rosen is doing 14 points better than Biden is in her race. Arizona Representative Ruben Gallego is doing 11 points better in his race. Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey, 8 points better, and Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin, 7 points better. Gallego, of course, running against Kari Lake for the Arizona Senate seat. Now, meanwhile, closing arguments for Trump's hush money trial are set for next week. Does that really matter? Let's again check the polls. A recent Quinnipiac University poll found that 62% of voters said a potentially guilty verdict made no difference to them, and while 21% said they would be less likely to vote for Trump, 15% said they'd actually be more likely to vote for him.
Another interesting point here, the Washington Post highlights that in 2020, there were significantly more voters who said they'd never vote for Trump. But now in 2024, more voters say they'd never vote for Biden. And some, like View co-host Joy Behar, are choosing their words about the president carefully so as not to sway those on the fence.
So I'm nervous about saying anything against Biden because I feel, not that I have so much power, and you have some more than I do, obviously, but
I don't know about that.
Are you afraid that you might, influence people who are on the fence?
I think you lose all credibility. I do. I mean, my bond with my audience has always been I don't pull a punch.
Yeah.
My bond with my audience is you're not going to like everything I say, but I'm saying what I really think is true.
The latest 538 poll shows that Biden with 40% of the general election vote, Trump with 41%, and RFK Jr., who's not invited to that presidential debate, taking 10% of the vote, leading some, like Elon Musk, to think of ways to get RFK Jr. on the stage with them, where he should be. After Elon told RFK he should be at the debate, RFK Jr. responded to Elon saying, "Would you host a debate on X?" To which Elon replied, "Sure."
Yeah, a lot there. There's some really interesting insight in this Washington Post piece. I want to pick up one point that we mentioned, which is that historically the presumption has been that Trump had a low ceiling, that he has a very stable base, that he's got this 30%, but it can't get much higher than that. There are people who will just never vote for Donald Trump, and he can't get past this. Those stats seem to have flipped according to this poll, where it looks like there's a lot of people who just say, under no circumstances will I vote for Joe Biden. And it's hard not to read that alongside some of the other criticisms he's been getting, most principally with the war in Gaza, in which so many people, I think, have been permanently alienated from him because of what feels like a foreign policy choice to stand by Netanyahu and his right-wing government instead of simply not. Yeah. No one's, you aren't the president of Israel. You can simply step away from this, stop your bear hug policy. But no matter, it seems, what kind of imagery we get coming out of Gaza, Joe Biden has chosen to potentially sacrifice his ability to win this election in order to continue to support Netanyahu. And the voters, I think, are asking themselves, well, why should I be the one to compromise here when the out for Biden here is so obvious?
Yeah, the difference between how the Senate candidates are performing is very illustrative, and the way I read it, so Jackie Rosen in Nevada is doing 14 points better than Biden. That's because she's not up 14 points in a race, she's up 2 points in her race, but he's down 12 in that state. So that's where that statistic comes from. So those are still close races, some of them. Although Ruben Gallego is right now slaughtering Kari Lake in Arizona. He's up. So he's up 18 points. The difference between him and Biden is 18 points because he's up 13 points over her. I think part of that is Kristen Sinema getting out of that race. It was going to maybe be a very interesting three-way contest where you weren't exactly sure who was going to pull votes for who. Kari Lake is very popular with the very MAGA base, but there are a lot of moderate Republicans in Arizona, who it's McCain territory, who very much do not like Trump and do not like the MAGA wing, and were they going to maybe vote for Kirsten Sinema? She had that friendship with Mitt Romney. You actually could see her cobbling together some kind of hybrid moderate vote, maybe. or at least, or whatever it was going to be. Or maybe she was going to be sabotaging the Gallego vote because they're both ostensibly Democrats. That could have been the case, but now it's just he's killing her. But.
Well, some other points here. The Biden campaign, I think when we had the last round of these polls some months ago, there was this, I think, hopefulness from Democrats that once these trials get underway, once we get closer to the election, that those would help Joe Biden pull away in the polls. That has not been the case. We're seeing that people just don't care about the outcome of these criminal trials. Moreover, there was the hope that the abortion issue might save Joe Biden. It is not doing as much work for Biden as people had hoped, at least according to polls, and it seems largely because people do not blame Donald Trump for Roe v. Wade being overturned in the first place. What
I see in the landscape for Joe Biden is specific frustrations with him from key demographics, key supporters, the left, young people, minority voters on specific issues like Gaza, student loan debt cancellation, things you talk about. Then also broader electorate frustration with the economic situation that they blame on him, that is a recipe for absolute failure right now. And on top of that, so those being two factors, and the third factor being the age question, which he just can't, there's no way to fix, gets worse literally every day. That's how aging works. And it is adding up to be, it's bad news. But he doesn't believe it. The reporting from the people inside, the White House, reporters who talk to people inside the White House, rather, is that he just doesn't believe the polling, and he thinks he's got some, they're going on vibes, I guess. They've got some secret, they believe their own polling or whatever it is.
Yeah, and to your point about minority voters, the Washington Post cites this 538 poll that shows that there's North-South division where Biden is underperforming his 2020 results in the South in particular, and they attribute that to Black voters, which are concentrated in the South, fleeing his camp. Remember, so much of the focus back in 2020 was not just on, winning generally speaking, but also winning the state of Georgia so that he could have control of the Senate. There was a lot of focus, a lot of attention going on there. And I remember seeing some of the election workers, the get out the vote folks from Georgia, Black voters coming forward after 2020 when there was immediately a series of disappointments about promises around $2,000 checks, promises around student debt cancellation, saying, I don't think I have any juice left in the tank to knock on these people's doors again after I promised them the moon and the stars. If you just get Biden elected, if you just earn Biden the Senate, this is all the things that he can do for you. When those things didn't manifest, they lost their credibility. Yeah. And you mentioned the broader economic concerns. Those broader economic concerns are reflected in what Black and Latino voters want out of all of these polls too, and disproportionately so, because Black and Latino voters are concentrated among the people who have been most disadvantaged by the economy since time immemorial.
And this is the issue that consistently ranks as the number one issue for Americans of all demographics, of all ages. That it is the economy and inflation, it is immigration, yes, it is abortion too, but as you pointed out, there's not enough blame being put specifically on Trump for that, and he's trying to head off, that criticism by the, statements he made that frankly, that many of the candidates made on the stage, even the ones who ran against him, like Nikki Haley, saying there should be no national federal abortion policy. The trials are not going to be, it doesn't seem like it. It could be different, I guess, when you get to the election-related ones, although they're not going to be wrapped up, or some of them are not even going to be taking place before the election. And so it's not going to be a gift to the Biden campaign the way they hoped it might be.
That's looking really tough, which is why I think people are recirculating the Ezra Klein argument that you got to swap him out at the convention. It's unclear whether or not it's too late. But again, if you're looking at polls and you're looking at kind of narrative evidence to suggest that Biden is going to lose no matter what, absent some kind of act of God, then what is frankly the harm of trying to slot someone else in the alternative, especially because, as you pointed out, the age issue isn't going away. It is in fact getting worse. We talked, I think yesterday, we showed a clip of him giving a speech at the Rose Garden, and he was confused. He was kind of bumbling.
He thought a hostage was in the audience. The hostage is still being held hostage.
Yeah, and it's not just the discrete mistakes. I know I think maybe more useful, or it seems more concrete and less kind of vibe centered to talk about, well, he actually made this specific mistake.
Sure.
But it's to me, what struck me more about that clip was his inability to kind of communicate clearly without kind of mumbling and not articulating his words clearly.
Role. That is the chief role of the president.
Yeah, and he sounds confused. It's not just that he's saying things that are wrong, it's that he sounds meandering and confused, and like it's difficult for him to articulate his words. And going in also to these debates, which are now on the table, I think the theorists who say he wanted one of the debates to come before the convention so it could be a test case for whether or not he could make it through to the election. I don't know if that was the plan, but I think it is a good plan, and the Democrats should rather take very seriously the possibility of doing a swap.
There's a lot riding on it, although if they thought he was going to do a great job of the debate, knock it out of the park, they should have wanted more of the debates closer to the election, where
that's what it means to have a test case. Yeah. I mean, they don't know, and no one's been debating because the Democrats didn't have a primary. There's a world where they could have had their test case by actually allowing there to be a Democratic primary.
And talk to Dean Phillips and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marianne and
yes, and that also could have been a test case for whether or not the replacements had any traction with the American public. Because now, whoever the Democrats might choose to replace Joe Biden has not been vetted at all by the American public, and there could be resentments about that as well.
All right, we will be watching closely. More Rising right after this.